Jake Morrison sat in the back row of the large lecture hall, trying to keep his breathing steady. The biomask on his face felt heavy and warm, but he knew it was working. To everyone else in the room, he looked like a young Alterian with blue skin and small horns. Nobody could see that he was actually human. The Kepler Xenobiology Institute was the most famous school in the galaxy. Students from dozens of different alien species came here to learn. Jake was supposed to be just another exchange student, but he had a secret mission. The Earth Federation had sent him to spy on the other species and learn what they really thought about humans. Dr. Zektar walked into the room and Jake felt his stomach drop. The professor was a Vorthek, standing nearly 8 feet tall with crystal-like skin that sparkled under the lights. 4 eyes moved independently on his head, scanning the room. His voice was deep and cold when he spoke. "Good morning, class. Today we begin a new case study in my advanced course on primitive species elimination protocols." Jake's hands gripped the edge of his desk. The other students around him pulled out their note-taking devices. There were reptilian Grecs with scales, and forked tongues, floating ethereals that looked like jellyfish made of light, and insect-like Clicktar that clicked and buzzed quietly to each other. "Our subject today," Dr. Zektar continued, "is a particularly interesting species from the Outer Rim. They call themselves humans, and they live on the third planet orbiting a yellow star they call Sol." Jake's heart began to race. He forced himself to stay calm and act interested like the other students. One of the Grecs raised a clawed hand. "Professor, why are we studying humans? They haven't even achieved faster than light travel yet." Dr. Zektar's 4 eyes focused on the student. "An excellent question, Vextar. While humans are indeed primitive, our intelligence network suggests they may become a problem in the future. It's always wise to study potential threats before they become actual threats." A holographic display appeared above the professor's desk. Jake watched in horror as a 3-dimensional image of a human body rotated slowly in the air. It looked exactly like his real body underneath the biomask. "Observe the human form," Dr. Zektar said, pointing with a long, crystalline finger. "Notice how fragile they appear. Their skin is soft and easily damaged. They have no natural armor, no claws, no poison glands, no defensive spines. Evolution has been remarkably unkind to this species." The professor zoomed in on different parts of the hologram. "They have only one heart, located here in the chest cavity. A single penetrating wound to this area would cause death within minutes. Unlike our Grex friends, who have 3 hearts distributed throughout their body, humans have created a single point of failure." Jake watched the Grex students nod their scaly heads and make notes. One of them hissed something that sounded like laughter. "Their respiratory system is equally primitive," Dr. Zektar continued. "They require a specific mixture of gases to survive, with oxygen being the most critical component. Remove their access to oxygen for just a few minutes and they will die. Compare this to the ethereals, who can survive in pure vacuum for days." The floating ethereals pulsed with different colors, which Jake had learned was their way of showing agreement. He felt sick listening to this clinical discussion of how to kill members of his own species. "Temperature regulation is another weakness," the professor went on. "Humans can only survive in a very narrow temperature range. Too hot, and they die from heat stroke. Too cold, and they freeze to death. Most species in this room can survive temperature extremes that would kill a human instantly." A Clicktar student raised one of its 6 arms. "Professor, what about their healing abilities?" "Primitive at best," Dr. Zektar replied. "When injured, humans heal very slowly compared to most species. A wound that would close in hours for a Grex might take weeks to heal for a human. They cannot regenerate lost limbs like some species can. Once damaged, they often stay damaged." Jake bit his tongue to keep from speaking. He wanted to shout that humans were tougher than this alien thought, but he couldn't reveal himself. "Not yet. Perhaps most interesting," Dr. Zektar said, "is their psychological makeup. Humans are highly emotional creatures. They form strong attachments to other individuals and suffer greatly when separated from them. This emotional weakness can be exploited in many ways. The professor brought up new images showing human families and groups. Capture one human, and you can control many others. They will sacrifice themselves to save their offspring or mates. They become irrational when their emotions are triggered. Fear, anger, sadness, all of these can be used as weapons against them. A young ethereal student pulsed with curiosity. What about their technology, Professor? We've heard they have weapons. Dr. Zektar made a sound that might have been laughter, crude chemical explosives and primitive projectile weapons. Yes, they have learned to kill each other efficiently. But their technology is centuries behind even our oldest spacefaring civilizations. They still use fossil fuels for energy and have barely begun to explore their own solar system. Jake's jaw clenched. He knew Earth's technology wasn't as advanced as these alien civilizations, but hearing it dismissed so casually made him angry. Their military tactics are equally primitive, the professor continued. They fight in predictable patterns, using outdated strategies based on their limited understanding of warfare. They have no experience fighting in zero gravity or on different planetary surfaces. Most importantly, they have no idea that other intelligent species exist. The students around Jake took more notes. He wished he could see what they were writing, but he didn't dare look too obvious about it. This brings us to the most significant advantage we would have over humans, Dr. Zektar said. Complete surprise. They have no idea they are being watched. They have no idea that multiple civilizations are already aware of their existence. They have no idea that some of us consider them a future threat. Jake felt cold despite the warmth. Biomask. The professor was talking about his homeworld, his family, his entire species like they were nothing more than insects to be studied and possibly eliminated. For homework, Dr. Zektar announced, I want each of you to design a theoretical containment protocol for humans. Consider what we've discussed today about their weaknesses. How would you prevent them from spreading beyond their home system? How would you neutralize them as a threat? Remember, this is purely an academic exercise, but I expect thorough analysis. The students began packing their equipment as the class ended. Jake sat still for a moment, overwhelmed by what he had just heard. This wasn't just casual xenobiology study. This was a detailed analysis of how to commit genocide against his entire species. As the other students filed out of the room, Jake made a decision. He needed to learn more about what Dr. Zektar knew. He needed to find out if this was just academic curiosity or if there were real plans being made to attack Earth. He walked down to the front of the classroom where Dr. Zektar was organizing his notes. The professor looked up as Jake approached. Yes, student? Do you have a question about today's lecture? Jake kept his voice steady and tried to sound like an eager student. Professor, I found your analysis fascinating. I was wondering if you might have time to discuss the assignment with me during your office hours. I want to make sure I understand all the implications. Dr. Zektar's 4 eyes studied Jake for a moment. Of course, I'm always pleased to help a student who shows genuine interest in the subject matter. My office hours are tomorrow at 1400 hours. Don't be late. As Jake walked out of the lecture hall, his mind was racing. He had come here to learn what aliens thought about humans. Now he was discovering that some of them were already planning for humanity's destruction. Tomorrow he would try to learn more. But first he needed to send a coded message back to Earth. His people needed to know they were being watched. Jake spent the night in his small dormitory room, staring at the ceiling. His biomask lay on the desk next to his bed, its blue glow indicating it was charging. Without it, his human features were visible in the dim light. Brown hair, brown eyes, pale skin that would give him away instantly if any alien saw him. He had sent a coded message to Earth through the quantum communication array, but it would take weeks to reach home. By then, it might be too late. He needed to learn more about what Dr. Zektar knew, and he needed to do it quickly. The next day, Jake put his biomask back on and made his way across the campus. The Kepler Institute was built on a series of floating platforms connected by transparent tubes. Outside the tubes, the alien world of Haven Prime stretched in all directions. Purple oceans and orange continents looked beautiful, but Jake couldn't enjoy the view. His mind was focused on the meeting ahead. Dr. Zektar's office was located in the research tower, the tallest building on the campus. Jake took the elevator up 40 floors, passing laboratories where alien students worked on projects he couldn't understand. When the doors opened, he walked down a long hallway lined with doors marked in different alien languages. The professor's door was larger than the others, designed to accommodate his 8-foot frame. Jake pressed the contact button and waited. "Enter," came Dr. Zektar's deep voice from inside. The office was huge, with walls covered in displays showing star charts and biological diagrams. Shelves held specimens from dozens of different worlds floating in clear containers. Jake tried not to look too closely at some of the more disturbing samples. Dr. Zektar sat behind a curved desk made of the same crystalline material as his skin. His 4 eyes looked up as Jake entered. The eager student, "Please take a seat. What specific aspects of the human elimination protocols would you like to discuss?" Jake sat in the chair across from the desk, fighting to keep his voice steady. "Professor, I was wondering about the psychological aspects you mentioned. How exactly would emotional manipulation work against humans?" Dr. Zektar's eyes brightened with interest. "Excellent question. Human psychology is remarkably predictable once you understand their basic drives." The professor activated a holographic display that showed images of human families. Jake recognized the pictures as surveillance photos taken on Earth. His stomach turned as he realized aliens had been watching his world for a long time. "Humans form what they call family units," Dr. Zektar explained. "Parents will do anything to protect their offspring. This creates an obvious weakness. Threaten the young, and the adults become completely irrational." Jake watched images of children playing in parks and schools. The professor was talking about using kids as weapons against their own parents. "They also form pair bonds with romantic partners," the professor continued. "Separate a mated pair, and both individuals suffer severe psychological distress. This distress makes them easier to control and more likely to make mistakes." More images appeared showing couples walking together, holding hands, embracing. Jake thought about his girlfriend Lisa back on Earth and felt sick. "But perhaps most useful is their tribal nature," Dr. Zektar said. "Humans divide themselves into groups based on geography, skin color, religious beliefs, and other arbitrary factors. They will fight each other over these differences even when facing a common threat." The display showed news footage of conflicts from around Earth, wars, protests, violence between different human groups. Jake realized the aliens had been studying not just human biology, but human society and all its flaws. "A skilled commander could exploit these divisions," the professor went on. "Turn one group against another. Make them destroy themselves while we watch from a safe distance. Much more efficient than direct warfare." Jake forced himself to ask another question. "What? About their military capabilities? Surely they have some defenses?" Dr. Zektar made that laughing sound again. "Primitive weapons designed for fighting other humans. Their most powerful explosives could barely damage the hull of a standard patrol ship. Their projectile weapons are useless against modern armor. Their aircraft cannot operate in space." The professor brought up technical specifications showing human military equipment compared to alien technology. The difference was overwhelming. Earth's most advanced fighter jets looked like toys next to the sleek alien ships in the database. "Their tactics are equally outdated," Dr. Zektar continued. "They fight on flat surfaces using formations developed for ground-based warfare. They have no experience with three-dimensional combat in space. No experience fighting enemies that can attack from above, below, or through dimensional portals." Jake's hands clenched in his lap. "What about their adaptability? Don't humans learn quickly?" "To some degree, yes," the professor admitted. "Humans do show a certain crude ingenuity when pressed. But adaptation takes time, and they would not have time. A properly planned assault would overwhelm them before they could adjust their tactics. Dr. Zektar leaned forward, his 4 eyes focusing on Jake with disturbing intensity. You seem very interested in human capabilities, student. This is good. Too many young beings underestimate their enemies, even primitive ones. Jake tried to look curious rather than terrified. I just want to understand all the factors involved, Professor. Wise thinking. Let me show you something that might interest you. The professor activated a new display that showed a detailed map of the Sol system. Earth appeared as a blue dot in the center, with all its major cities marked in red. Military bases, government centers, population hubs, everything was labeled and analyzed. We have been observing the human homeworld for 67 of their years, Dr. Zektar said. Our scout ships have mapped every continent, every major installation, every strategic resource. They have no idea we exist. Jake stared at the map, recognizing the locations of his hometown, his university, the military base where his father had worked. The aliens knew everything about Earth's defenses. How many of you are watching them? Jake asked, trying to keep his voice casual. Not just my people, Dr. Zektar replied. The Grex Confederation has been monitoring human radio signals for decades. The Ethereal Collective has probe ships stationed at the edge of their solar system. Even the Kliktar hive mind has sent observers. The professor activated another display showing alien ship positions around Earth's solar system. Dozens of vessels from different species, all watching and waiting. Why haven't you acted yet? Jake asked. Because there is no immediate threat, Dr. Zektar explained. Humans are still trapped on their homeworld. Their primitive rockets can barely reach their own moon. It will be decades before they develop faster-than-light travel. Jake felt a small spark of hope. Maybe Earth had more time than he thought, but then Dr. Zektar continued. However, some intelligence reports suggest they may develop space travel sooner than expected. There are rumors of secret research projects, breakthrough technologies being tested. If these reports are accurate, we may need to act within the next few years. The hope died in Jake's chest. Act how? That depends on the threat level assessment. The professor said, if humans appear close to achieving interstellar capability, several options have been proposed. Orbital bombardment of key cities. Biological weapons targeted at their immune systems. Economic collapse through manipulation of their primitive computer networks. Jake struggled to keep his expression neutral as Dr. Zektar described different ways to destroy his homeworld. The cleansing protocol has been drafted and approved by the Allied Species Council, the professor continued. It calls for simultaneous strikes on Earth's major population centers, followed by systematic elimination of any survivors. The entire operation could be completed in less than one of their days. The Allied Species Council? Jake asked. A coalition of 7 major civilizations that have agreed humans represent a potential future threat. The Vorthic Hegemony, the Grex Confederation, the Ethereal Collective, the Kliktar hive mind, the Saurian Empire, the Crystalline Dominion, and the Metal Syndicate. Jake memorized every name. These were the enemies Earth didn't know it had. When would this protocol be activated? He asked. Dr. Zektar's 4 eyes studied Jake carefully. You ask very specific questions, young student. Are you perhaps working on a research project of your own? Jake's heart raced, but he managed to sound calm. I'm considering this topic for my final thesis, Professor. I want to understand all the strategic considerations. The professor seemed satisfied with this answer. The protocol would be activated. If humans achieve faster-than-light travel, if they discover evidence of alien life, or if they develop weapons capable of threatening other worlds. Jake realized with growing horror that Earth was much closer to triggering these conditions than the aliens knew. Human scientists were already working on theoretical faster-than-light drives. Radio telescopes were getting better at detecting signals from space. And while Earth's weapons couldn't threaten other worlds yet, the technology was advancing rapidly. Is there anything else you'd like to know about the elimination protocols? Dr. Zektar asked. Jake forced himself to smile. I think I have enough information for now, Professor. Thank you for your time. As Jake stood to leave, Dr. Zektar spoke again. Remember, student, this is all theoretical discussion. Jake left Dr. Zektar's office with his mind spinning. The information he had learned was worse than anything Earth's intelligence services had imagined. 7 alien civilizations were watching his homeworld, and they had detailed plans to wipe out humanity if humans got too advanced too quickly, but Jake needed more information. He needed to know exactly when the aliens planned to attack, and he needed to know if there were any weaknesses in their alliance. Most importantly, he needed to get the intelligence back to Earth before it was too late. 3 days later, Jake returned to Dr. Zektar's office during regular office hours. This time, he had prepared a more detailed cover story. Professor, Jake said as he entered the office, I've been working on my thesis proposal about human elimination protocols, but I'm running into some problems with the psychological analysis section. Dr. Zektar looked up from a stack of data tablets on his desk, his 4 eyes focused on Jake with interest. What kind of problems, student? Jake sat down and pulled out his own data tablet, which he had loaded with fake research notes. I'm trying to understand how human behavior changes under extreme stress. The standard psychological profiles seem incomplete. The professor leaned back in his chair, clearly pleased to have a student taking such a deep interest in his specialty. You're quite right to notice that. The standard profiles are based on observations of humans during their normal daily activities, but humans under threat behave very differently. Dr. Zektar activated his holographic display again. This time, it showed video footage that made Jake's blood run cold. The images were clearly taken from orbit around Earth, showing cities and military bases in perfect detail. These recordings were made by our surveillance drones, the professor explained. We have been monitoring human responses to natural disasters, wars, and other crisis situations for decades. Jake watched footage of humans helping each other during earthquakes and floods. He saw soldiers fighting to protect civilians during conflicts. He saw ordinary people risking their lives to save strangers. But he also saw the darker side, looting, panic, violence when social order broke down. As you can see, Dr. Zektar continued, humans display both cooperative and destructive behaviors under stress. The key is understanding which conditions trigger which responses. The professor zoomed in on specific scenes. When humans believe they can survive through cooperation, they often work together effectively. But when resources become scarce or when they believe death is certain, they frequently turn on each other. Jake forced himself to take notes, playing the role of an interested student. But inside he was horrified by how closely the aliens had been watching Earth. Professor, how long have your people been gathering this kind of detailed intelligence? The systematic observation program began 83 Earth years ago, Dr. Zektar replied. But we have been aware of human existence for much longer. The professor brought up a new display showing a timeline of alien contact with Earth. Jake saw entries dating back hundreds of years. First contact was made by a Grex exploration vessel in what humans call the year 1847, Dr. Zektar explained. The Grex observed human technology and social development for several decades, before reporting their findings to the other species. Jake's mind raced. Aliens had been watching Earth since before the American Civil War. They had seen the development of electricity, automobiles, airplanes, computers, space travel, all of it. The decision to begin detailed surveillance was made after humans developed nuclear weapons, the professor continued. That demonstrated they could potentially become a threat to other worlds if they ever achieved interstellar travel. What exactly triggered the creation of the elimination protocols? Jake asked. Dr. Zektar's expression became more serious. Several factors. The rapid advancement of human technology in the past century. Their aggressive nature. They are one of the few species we have observed that regularly wages war against its own kind. And most concerning, their expansion drive. Expansion drive? Humans show a strong desire to spread beyond their homeworld, the professor explained. Most species are content to remain on their birth planets once they achieve technological maturity, but humans constantly talk about colonizing other worlds, spreading across the galaxy. This makes them inherently dangerous to established civilizations. Jake realized the aliens saw humanity's greatest strength, the drive to explore and expand, as a threat that needed to be eliminated. Professor, you mentioned that several species are involved in these protocols. How is the operation coordinated? Dr. Zektar hesitated for a moment, then seemed to decide that sharing the information would help with Jake's research. The Allied Species Council meets every 5 Earth years to review the human threat assessment. The next meeting is scheduled for 6 months from now. If they determine that humans are close to achieving faster-than-light travel, the cleansing protocol will be activated. Jake's heart sank. 6 months. That was barely enough time to get back to Earth, let alone prepare any kind of defense. How would Earth's governments react if they knew they were being watched? Jake asked, trying to sound like he was asking a theoretical question. Panic, most likely, Dr. Zektar replied. Human governments are notoriously unstable and prone to irrational decisions when faced with threats they don't understand. They would probably start fighting each other over how to respond, making our job easier. The professor activated another display showing detailed analysis of Earth's political systems. Jake saw intelligence reports on every major world leader, military commander, and government agency. We know the location of every nuclear weapon on Earth, Dr. Zektar said. Every military base, every government bunker, every communications center. Human security is laughably primitive compared to our surveillance technology. Jake stared at the display in shock. The aliens had infiltrated Earth's most secure facilities without anyone knowing. How is that possible? He asked. Microdrones. The size of insects, the professor explained. Quantum phase technology that allows our ships to observe without being detected. And of course, we have agents. Agents? Dr. Zektar nodded. Biological constructs designed to look exactly like humans. They have been living on Earth for decades, working in key positions within human governments and militaries. When the time comes to implement the cleansing protocol, they will disable Earth's defenses from within. Jake felt like he was going to be sick. Not only were aliens planning to attack Earth, but they had already infiltrated human society with spies who looked completely human. How many agents are on Earth? Jake asked. That information is classified above my clearance level, Dr. Zektar replied. But I can tell you there are enough to ensure the success of the operation. The professor leaned forward, his 4 eyes studying Jake intently. You seem very focused on the operational details, student. Most academic research would concentrate more on the theoretical aspects. Jake's pulse quickened, but he managed to keep his voice steady. I want to make sure my thesis is thorough, Professor. Understanding the practical implementation helps me analyze the psychological factors more accurately. Dr. Zektar seemed satisfied with this explanation. Admirable dedication. Very well, let me show you something that will help with your research. The professor activated a secure terminal on his desk and entered a long access code. Jake watched carefully, memorizing the sequence. These are the actual deployment plans for the cleansing protocol, Dr. Zektar said. Normally, this information would be restricted to military commanders, but since this is for academic research, Jake stared at the screen as detailed attack plans appeared. Ship positions, target priorities, timeline for the assault, everything. Earth would need to know to prepare a defense. The first wave will target Earth's major cities with orbital bombardment, Dr. Zektar explained. Simultaneously, the infiltration agents will disable military communication networks and nuclear launch systems. The second wave will eliminate any remaining military installations. Jake memorized every detail he could while pretending to take academic notes. What about human space installations? Jake asked. The space station, the moon bases? All identified and targeted, the professor replied. Humans will not be allowed to escape to other worlds. The goal is complete elimination of the species. Dr. Zektar continued explaining the attack plan in clinical detail. Jake learned about the alien weapons that could destroy entire cities in seconds, about the biological agents designed to target human DNA, about the plan to contaminate Earth's atmosphere to prevent any survivors from rebuilding. As the professor spoke, Jake realized that Earth faced a threat far beyond anything human military planners had ever imagined. But he also began to see something else. The aliens were overconfident. They had studied human weaknesses carefully, but they seemed to have missed human strengths. "Professor," Jake said, "what if humans don't react the way your models predict? What if they find a way to work together instead of fighting each other?" Dr. Zektar made his laughing sound. "Impossible. We have observed human behavior for over a century. They always turn on each other when faced with existential threats. It's their nature." Jake nodded and smiled, but inside he was thinking that Dr. Zektar was about to learn something important about human nature. Jake returned to his dormitory room with his head spinning from everything he had learned. The classified files Dr. Zektar had given him contained enough information to change the course of human history, if he could get them back to Earth. In time, he sat at his small desk and activated his personal datapad, carefully copying the most important intelligence files to encrypted storage devices. Ship positions, attack plans, infiltration protocols, even the names and locations of the alien agents. Living on Earth, everything his people would need to prepare for what was coming. As Jake worked, he noticed his biomask was getting warm against his face. He had been wearing it for hours without a break, and the power cells were starting to drain faster than usual. He would need to let it recharge soon, but first he had to finish copying the files. 3 hours later, Jake finally removed the biomask and set it on the charging dock. His real face looked back at him from the mirror on his desk. Pale human skin, brown eyes. The face of someone who looked nothing like the blue-skinned Alterian student everyone thought he was. A soft chime from his door made Jake freeze. Someone was outside his room. "Student Jake?" came a familiar deep voice through the door. "This is Dr. Zektar. I need to speak with you about your research project." Jake's heart began racing. Why was the professor here at his dormitory? And why now, when his biomask was charging and his real face was exposed? "Just a moment, Professor," Jake called out, grabbing the biomask from its charging dock. The power indicator showed only 30% charge, not enough for extended use. But it would have to do. Jake quickly put the mask on and activated it. His reflection shimmered and changed, showing the blue-skinned alien features he had been hiding behind for months. But something was wrong. The edges of the disguise looked fuzzy, and his real human features kept flickering through. The chime sounded again, more insistent this time. "Coming, Professor," Jake called. Hoping his voice sounded normal, he opened the door and found Dr. Zektar standing in the hallway. All 4 of his crystalline eyes focused intently on Jake's face. "I hope I'm not disturbing you," the professor said, though his tone suggested he didn't really care if he was. "But I realized I made an error in one of the files I shared with you earlier. I need to correct it before you include the wrong information in your thesis." Jake stepped aside to let the professor enter his small room. "Of course, Professor. What kind of error?" Dr. Zektar walked over to Jake's desk, where the datapad was still displaying some of the classified files. His eyes scanned the screen, and Jake saw his expression change slightly. "Interesting," the professor said slowly. "You seem to have copied far more information than necessary for an academic thesis. This looks more like intelligence gathering than research." Jake felt sweat forming under his biomask, making the disguise even more unstable. "I want it to be thorough, Professor. I thought the extra detail would make my analysis more comprehensive." Dr. Zektar turned to face Jake directly, his 4 eyes studying every detail of Jake's appearance. "Tell me, student, what planet are you from originally?" The question caught Jake off guard. "Ultria Prime, Professor, like my student records show." "Curious," Dr. Zektar said, moving closer. "Because I contacted Ultria Prime yesterday to verify your academic credentials. They have no record of anyone by your name." Jake's mind raced. "For an explanation, there must be some mistake, Professor." "Perhaps a clerical error in their database?" But even as he spoke, Jake could see his biomask flickering more badly. The low power warning was flashing in the corner of his vision, and he knew the disguise wouldn't hold much longer. Dr. Zektar noticed the flickering too. His eyes widened as he caught brief glimpses of Jake's real human features beneath the failing disguise. "What are you?" the professor whispered, backing away from Jake. The biomask finally failed completely, its power cells drained. Jake's real face appeared fully, no longer hidden by alien features. Dr. Zektar stared in shock at the pale human skin. The brown eyes, the distinctly terrestrial features he had been lecturing about for months. "You're human," Dr. Zektar breathed. "You're actually human." Jake knew there was no point in denying it anymore. "Yes, Professor, I'm human." Dr. Zektar's four eyes darted to the datapad on the desk, then back to Jake's face. "You've been spying on us. You've stolen classified information about the elimination protocols." The professor reached for the emergency communicator on his belt, but Jake moved faster. Months of hiding had kept him in good physical condition, and Dr. Zektar had made one crucial mistake in his analysis of human capabilities. He had underestimated human speed and reflexes when survival was at stake. Jake grabbed the professor's wrist before he could activate the communicator. Dr. Zektar was much larger and stronger than Jake, but the alien had spent his life in academic environments. He had never been in a real fight. "Professor, listen to me," Jake said, struggling to keep hold of the alien's arm. "You don't understand what you're really doing. Humans aren't the threat." "You think we are?" Dr. Zektar tried to pull free, his four eyes wide with panic. "You're lying. You're exactly the threat we predicted. You've infiltrated our most secure institutions. You've stolen our military secrets." "I'm one person," Jake said. "One person trying to protect his homeworld from genocide. That's not the same as being a galactic threat." But Dr. Zektar wasn't listening. He was too shocked by the revelation that he had been teaching a human how to kill humans. With his free hand, he reached for a crystal weapon on his desk. Jake had to make a split-second decision. He could let Dr. Zektar raise the alarm, which would mean capture and probably death. Or he could fight back and try to escape with the intelligence that could save Earth. The choice was easy. Jake used a combat technique he had learned in Earth's military training. He grabbed Dr. Zektar's reaching arm and used the alien's own momentum against him. The professor, off balance and unprepared for human fighting tactics, crashed into his desk. "I'm sorry, Professor," Jake said, though he wasn't really sorry, "but I can't let you stop me from warning my people." Dr. Zektar groaned and tried to get up, but Jake was already moving. He grabbed the datapad and the storage devices containing the copied files, then headed for the door. "The security forces will hunt you down," Dr. Zektar called after him. "You'll never make it off this planet." Jake paused at the door. "Professor, you spent months teaching me about human weaknesses, but you never studied human strengths." "You're about to learn about them." As Jake ran down the dormitory hallway, he could hear Dr. Zektar activating his emergency communicator behind him. Alarms began blaring throughout the building as security forces were alerted to the human spy in their midst. Jake made it to the stairwell before the first security guards reached his floor. He could hear their heavy footsteps and alien voices shouting orders in languages he didn't understand. But he had one advantage. He knew the building's layout from months of living there. And humans were better at moving quickly through tight spaces than most alien species. He reached the ground floor and sprinted toward the campus transportation hub. His only chance was to reach the spaceport before the security net closed around him. The passenger shuttle to the orbital station was scheduled to leave in 20 minutes. Behind him, Jake could hear the sounds of pursuit getting closer. Security forces from multiple species were converging on his location. But they were making the same mistake Dr. Zektar had made. They were underestimating what a desperate human could accomplish. Jake reached the transportation hub and jumped onto a moving platform just as security guards rounded the corner behind him. Laser blasts scorched the wall next to his head, but he was already accelerating away from them. As the platform carried him toward the spaceport, Jake activated the emergency beacon built into his Earth Federation uniform. It would send a distress signal to any human ships in the area, though he doubted any would receive it in time. The spaceport was in chaos when Jake arrived. Security alerts were blaring, and alien police forces were setting up checkpoints at every entrance. But Jake had studied the facility's layout during his time at the Institute, and he knew about the maintenance tunnels that connected to the civilian departure areas. He made it to the passenger shuttle just as the boarding ramp was closing. The alien crew members didn't recognize him as the human spy everyone was looking for without his biomask. He just looked like another species they weren't familiar with. As the shuttle lifted off from Haven Prime, Jake looked down at the planet, where he had learned the truth about humanity's situation. Dr. Zektar was probably giving a full report to his superiors right now, explaining how a human had infiltrated their most secure facility and stolen their most classified information. But Jake had something the professor didn't expect. He had hope. Dr. Zektar had taught him everything about the aliens' plans, but the professor had failed to understand the one thing that made humans truly dangerous: when humans were cornered, when their survival was threatened, when their families and homeworlds were at stake, they didn't give up. They fought back with everything they had, and they found ways to win against impossible odds. The shuttle docked with the orbital station, and Jake immediately began looking for transport back to Earth. He had the intelligence, his people. Jake found himself aboard the orbital station circling Haven Prime with nowhere to hide. Every few minutes, security announcements echoed through the corridors in different alien languages, but Jake could understand enough to know they were all looking for him. He needed a ship to get back to Earth, but the commercial passenger liners would take months to reach human space, and he would be caught long before then. Jake made his way to the station's cargo bay levels, hoping to find a faster alternative. The cargo section was filled with ships from dozens of different worlds. Jake studied them carefully, looking for something small and fast that he could steal without being detected. Most of the vessels were too large or too well guarded, but then he spotted something promising. A sleek Saurian courier ship sat in Docking Bay 7. It was designed for speed rather than comfort, exactly what Jake needed. The ship appeared to be unguarded, probably because no one expected a primitive human to be capable of stealing advanced alien technology. Jake approached the ship carefully, using maintenance corridors to avoid the main walkways where security cameras might spot him. The Saurian technology was different from anything he had trained on, but the basic principles were similar to Earth spacecraft. It took Jake 20 minutes to figure out how to open the ship's airlock, another 10 minutes to reach the control room and begin studying the flight systems. The symbols and controls were alien, but Jake had always been good with machines. He was just beginning to understand the navigation system when alarms started blaring throughout the space station. Security forces had discovered the ship's owner and realized his vessel was being stolen. Jake's fingers flew over the alien controls, trying to activate the ship's engines before security forces could reach him. The Saurian ship was more advanced than anything humans had built, but it was also more complicated. Through the ship's viewports, Jake could see alien security teams running toward his docking bay. Some carried weapons that could disable a ship's systems from the outside. He had maybe 2 minutes before they reached him. The ship's engines finally came online with a deep humming sound. Jake grabbed the flight controls and pulled the ship away from the docking bay just as the first security team arrived. Laser blasts sparked off the ship's hull, but Jake was already accelerating away from the station. "Unknown vessel, return to docking bay immediately," came a voice over the communications system. "You are in violation of Haven Prime security protocols." Jake ignored the warning and pushed the ship's engines to maximum power. The Saurian vessel was incredibly fast, much faster than anything in Earth's fleet. Within minutes, Haven Prime was just a dot behind him, but Jake's relief was short-lived. His ship's sensors detected multiple vessels launching from the planet's surface and the orbital stations. The entire alien alliance was mobilizing to stop him from reaching Earth. Over the next several hours, Jake learned just how outmatched he was. The pursuing ships were larger, faster, and better armed than his stolen courier vessel. They also had better pilots, alien crews with decades of experience in space combat. But Jake had something they didn't expect: human creativity and the willingness to try things that seemed impossible. When 3 Grex interceptors cornered him near a gas giant, Jake flew his ship directly into the planet's atmosphere. The Grex pilots, trained to follow standard tactical procedures, hesitated to follow him into such a dangerous environment. Jake used the gas giant's thick atmosphere to hide from their sensors, then emerged on the opposite side of the planet while the Grex ships were still searching for him in the upper atmosphere. When a Clicktar battleship tried to disable his engines with an electromagnetic pulse weapon, Jake flew directly at the much larger vessel. The Clicktar captain, expecting Jake to turn away at the last second, was caught off guard when the human ship passed within meters of his hull. Using the battleship's own bulk to shield against the pulse weapon, each encounter taught Jake more about his enemy's tactics and psychology. The aliens were skilled and experienced, but they were also predictable. They followed established procedures and protocols, while Jake was making up his strategy as he went along. 3 days into his escape, Jake realized he was being herded. The alien ships weren't just chasing him randomly, they were forcing him towards specific regions of space where larger fleets were waiting. Jake checked his navigation system and saw that he was approaching the edge of the Kepler system. Beyond that lay empty space for several light years before the next inhabited star system. If the aliens could force him to run out of fuel in that empty region, he would be trapped. But Jake had been studying the stolen intelligence files during quiet moments of his escape. He knew where the alien ships were positioned, and he had an idea that might turn the chase in his favor. Instead of continuing toward the empty space where his enemies wanted to trap him, Jake suddenly changed course toward the heart of the Kepler system. His sensors showed dozens of alien ships moving to intercept him, but Jake wasn't planning to fight them directly. The Kepler system's main star was undergoing solar flare activity, creating massive electromagnetic disturbances throughout the region. Most ships avoided the area because the flares could damage sensitive electronics. Jake flew directly toward the star, pushing his stolen ship's engines beyond their recommended limits. Behind him, the alien pursuit fleet hesitated. Their commanders were radioing warnings about the dangerous solar activity. "This is Admiral Vexstar of the Grex Confederation," came a transmission directed at Jake's ship. "You are flying into a solar storm zone. Turn back immediately or you will be destroyed." Jake activated his ship's communication system for the first time since stealing the vessel. "Admiral, this is Jake Morrison of Earth. I have a message for all the species hunting me." There was a moment of silence, then multiple alien voices began speaking at once over the communication channels. "Tell your commanders," Jake continued, "that you underestimated humans. You studied our weaknesses, but you never understood our strengths. And now you're about to learn why that was a mistake." Jake flew his ship directly into the solar storm, using the electromagnetic interference to mask his ship's signature. The alien fleet lost track of him completely as their sensors were overwhelmed by the stellar radiation, but Jake wasn't trying to hide. He was using the solar storm's energy to charge his ship's quantum communication array, a system so advanced that most human technology couldn't even detect it. As solar flares erupted around his ship, Jake transmitted everything he had learned back to Earth: the intelligence about the alien alliance, the attack plans, the locations of enemy fleets, the identities of alien agents living on Earth. All of it went out in a single burst transmission that used the star's own energy to punch through the vast distance to human space. The transmission lasted only a few seconds, but it contained enough information to change everything. Earth's governments would finally know what they were facing, and they would have time to prepare. Jake's ship emerged from the solar storm badly damaged but still functional. The alien fleet was waiting for him, but something had changed. Their formation was different, more defensive than aggressive. "Human vessel," came Admiral Vexstar's voice again. "We detected your transmission. What did you send to your homeworld?" Jake smiled as he looked at the alien ships surrounding him. "Everything, Admiral. Every plan, every secret, every weakness. In your alliance, my people know you're coming now." The alien fleet held their position, unsure how to respond. Their entire strategy had been based on surprise and humanity's ignorance of the threat. Now that advantage was gone. You have doomed your own species, Admiral Vextar said. When the Allied Species Council learns of this breach, they will order immediate implementation of the cleansing protocol. Maybe, Jake replied. But you made one crucial error in your analysis of humans, Admiral. You assumed we would react with panic and chaos when we learned about the threat. You assumed we would fight each other instead of fighting you. Jake's ship was surrounded and outgunned, but he wasn't afraid anymore. His mission was complete. You're about to discover that humans fight hardest when our backs are against the wall, Jake continued. And thanks to Dr. Zektar's detailed lectures on how to kill humans, my people now know exactly how you plan to attack us. That gives us something you never expected us to have. What? Admiral Vextar asked. A chance to fight back. Jake's ship was captured, but the damage was already done. The intelligence he had transmitted would reach Earth within days, giving humanity time to prepare for the war that was coming. The Alien Alliance had spent decades studying how to eliminate humans. Now they were about to learn that the species they had dismissed as primitive and weak had their own hidden strengths. The professor's lecture on human elimination had become humanity's survival guide, and the hunters were about to become the hunted.